Hey grippers, welcome back to the Death Grip Garage. Today's video is going to be great for anybody that is thinking about purchasing a KTM 350 EXC-F, especially if you're like me and you're wondering if you can buy one bike that can just do it all. Everything from technical single track all the way to long distance ADV and dual sport type rides. Also, I'm going to be going through the modifications that I've made to my personal 350 to make it perform better from a single track perspective, as well as the steps that I do to convert the bike and get it ready for a big, long dual sport ride. This video will be one part of two. So in this first video, I'll walk through the journey that I went through to purchase the bike, and then the modifications that I made to get it ready for off-road and single track racing. And then in a second video, I'll walk through the steps that I do then to get the bike ready for a dual sport ride. And I'll link that in the comments. If you like this, if you enjoy the video, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. You guys know the drill. Let's get going. So my first KTM I had was a 300 XCW back in the 2000s. I used it for hare scrambles and enduros. Then I switched and I started racing a YZ-125 that was modified for woods riding. Really enjoyed the bike. I don't know if I was any faster, but I really enjoyed the bike. I'm definitely a super average vet B rider. So not an A or double A type of off-road rider, but get around a hare scramble or an enduro course just fine. So I'd been racing the YZ-125, and then for dual sport and ADV type riding, I was using a Honda XR650L that you guys have probably seen in some of my videos. They're in the late 2000s or 20 teens, I guess. A lot of my buddies on the longer dual sport rides were starting to ride 500 EXC-Fs. And I was starting to become EXC-F curious myself, especially with the thought that, okay, could I replace my YZ-125 and my XR650L and just have one bike that would do it all, save some garage space, save some maintenance time. And so I started accidentally on purpose watching all the dealer ads, waiting for a great deal on a closeout bike or a leftover non-current bike. And in late 2019, I ended up finding this 2018 KTM 350 EXC-F at a local dealer and purchased it. Everything I'm going to talk about, the bikes, the EXC-Fs have went through a couple generations since the 2018, but almost everything I'm going to talk about applies to the newer generations as well. A lot of the parts and things like that, they may not be the exact same part, but the impact that they make and most of these manufacturers have the same parts for the newer generation, so everything should apply to any one of your newer 250, 350, or 500 EXC-Fs. You might be wondering, okay, why didn't you buy a 500 EXC-F since that's what my buddies were having or had bought? I don't know. That I've ridden enough 500s to know that for me to, at least in Iowa on our terrain, for me to race the 500 in some of our more technical single track enduros, hare scrambles, that's going to be a lot of motor. It's going to be more motor than I want to ride. So I kind of decided not to go after the 500 and felt like that the 350 size was going to be a better fit for what I was looking for. In addition, why did I not get an XC or an XCW and then put a plate on it? Since those come definitely more tuned for off-road riding, they produce more power, at least off the dealer floor. And in Iowa, where I'm at, it's super hard to get a license plate for a bike that comes from a dealership as off-road only. So starting with the EXC-F model is definitely the simplest route to get there. So I bought this 18 at the end of 2019. And I got it home. I already had my race bike, my YZ-125 sold. And so I got it home and unloaded it, went for a ride around kind of just a local gravel loop, and I was really disappointed. The thing shook, it vibrated, it was super twitchy on the gravel. The motor was really choked up. It definitely felt heavier. I've got a tight little loop behind the shop here that I can go through, and the bike felt heavier. Everything was not as much fun as my 125 was, and when I had it out on the gravel or on the pavement, it was very uncomfortable, compared to my XR650L. So I definitely had some buyer's remorse after those first couple rides, and was wondering if I'd done the right thing. I will say though, once I spooned on, I think it came with those Continental TKC 80s, terrible tires for off-road. But once I spooned on some real knobbies, got it out to one of our larger riding areas, then I started to gel with the bike a little more. The suspension started breaking in, the engine started breaking in a little bit more. It definitely worked better. I got into some more high speed stuff. I started gelling with the bike a little bit better. So I started liking it a little bit better. I got used to it. I did sell the 125. I started racing this bike. Not as much fun as my 125 was, but probably just as fast on the bike. And at the end of the day, it's been a good off-road bike. After those first few rides on gravel and things like that, I had sort of written the bike off as far as being able to dual sport it. I just felt like, okay, this thing's going to be just so uncomfortable that I'm not going to use it that way. But I balanced the wheels. That's like the number one thing to make these things livable with on the street. But I balanced the wheels, and actually, with the first true, what I'd call not off-road or dual sport type of ride I took on it was me and some buddies were going to go to Daytona Bike Week. We just wanted to throw some dual sport or some small bikes in the back of a van to go down there and not take a trailer or anything like that. So I ended up taking this bike to Daytona Bike Week. I bought a tusk rack for it. I had a universal plate that I could put on the rack, and I had a top box stuck on there to stick my helmet in, and I rode the bike around Daytona Bike Week for a week. And it works pretty good for doing that, just for you're really not going on any long rides when we're doing that. But it worked good for that. And so from there, I slowly kind of kept tweaking it, and getting it more suited for a dual sport ride. Took it on a long weekend ride down in the Ozarks. It worked pretty good for that. And now I've taken it on some really long dual sport rides. This bike is done. I won't probably have the mileage exactly right here. We did the Northeast Backcountry Discovery Route. That was 1,900 miles. Last summer we did the Northern California BDR, which was 1,600 miles. And next year in 2026, we're looking at doing the Washington and the Oregon BDRs together. And that ride, when we get done, will probably be 2,400 to 2,500 miles. And right now I'm planning to do it on the 350. So I've got some big rides planned, and the bike actually worked really well. And very rarely have I wished that I was on my XR 650, which I still have, and I still use it for some local rides. But very, very rarely do I wish I was on that bike and not on the 350. If money and time and shop space and everything were no issue at all, I think my perfect garage right now would probably be a KTM 150 XCW for racing. I really like those small light bikes like that. And then I would probably have a 500 EXC-F for dual sport and adventure riding. I think I could set one of those up really nice using everything I've learned off this 350. But for right now, this is what I've got, and I really liked it. And if I was going to go buy a brand new motorcycle tomorrow to replace this one, it would probably be another 350. I would probably actually shoot for one from the 2020 to 2023 time frame. There's some things that they've done on the 24 and newer ones with the stiffness of the frame and the fuel pump placement and some things like that I'm not a huge fan of. So I'd probably try to find a very low hour 2020 through 2023 350, and that's what I would replace this one with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a walk around on this bike, talk about really how I stripped it down and got it ready for off-road riding and racing. And then, like I said before, in a second video, we'll go through the changes that I make to get it ready for one of those longer dual sport rides. As I'm going around the bike and walking through the changes that I've made, if you see something that you want to see more detail on than what I cover here, I'll be going through things pretty fast. By all means, put a comment, and we'll see if we can put a video together for that. All right, let's get started. Engine, intake, and exhaust. So I have not had this engine apart on this bike. It's got just shy of 300 hours and 10,000 miles on it. I did a valve check at 90 hours on the bike, and all the valves were in spec. One was getting close to being tight, but I didn't make an adjustment at that point. And then I checked them again at 140 hours and went ahead and I adjusted. I did adjust one back to spec. I think it was one of the exhaust valves. I did another check at 200 hours. Everything was within spec. I didn't make any adjustments. When I was at 200 hours and I had the bike, I was doing checks there. I went ahead and did a leak down test. At that point, the leak down was at 6%, which I considered good. Felt like everything was tight in the motor and didn't need a piston or anything like that. So I'm getting ready now that we're at 300 hours and almost 10,000 miles, and it's winter here in Iowa. I'm going to go ahead and do another valve check, and I'll do another leak down, compare that to the number I got last time, and see if it needs a piston. I'm actually very optimistic that it won't. I'll probably try to do a quick little video as I do those checks, just to do a little update on where this engine is at 300 hours, 10,000 miles. Bike starts and runs like new. Can't tell any difference as far as power dropping off or anything like that. All the internals on the engine are original, except for I did put a Dirt Tricks cam chain tensioner in it. The stock one is a little notorious for getting rattly, and every once in a while I could hear a little rattle in there. So I don't remember how many hours were on the bike, but I did put a Dirt Tricks cam chain tensioner in. On the 350s, it is super fiddly to get that in there. I did not have to take the engine out. I did not have to loosen the engine, but it's very fiddly to get that thing in and out of there. The other thing I did, and again, I can't remember the hours, but I did put in Takamoto steel oil pump gears. This bike would have come with did come with the plastic oil pump gears, so I did put the Takamoto steel oil pump gears in there. And when I did that, I replaced the clutch dampeners with the Recluse clutch dampeners as recommended by Takamoto. The originals were still in pretty good shape, but I went ahead and made that update. All the emissions equipment has been removed on the bike. I did that when I got it new. I can't remember what kit I used to do it, but I'm pretty sure it was probably Sick Ass Racing. I really don't follow any particular oil change schedule. I would say every couple off-road rides, 2-3 off-road rides, I change it. Definitely after any type of dual sport ride, I change it. On the Northeast BDR, on the NorCal BDR, I change the oil halfway through the ride. The bike's super easy to dump the oil out of. I didn't change the filter when I did that, but about halfway through the ride at one of the motels at night, I use a gallon baggie and dump the oil out, throw another quart in, and it's easy peasy. This is a great time for me to plug MotorX. MotorX has been helping me out for many, many years. A lot of faith in their oils. I've had a lot of different bikes that have just run a long time on MotorX and done well. So I use, my go-to is usually the Crosspower 10W60. I think I have a quart of that right here. MotorX 10W60, and I run this usually for hot temperatures. In the fall, winter, spring, I'll usually run 10W50, but for the hot season and for the super long rides, I run the 10W60. Great results with MotorX. Use their chain lubes and a lot of their different products around the shop. For oil filters, I tend to use KTM or High Flow. Get a lot of my stuff through Rocky Mountain, so I had no issues there. I've never seen anything in the oil filter. Every once in a while, I'll get just a little tiny bit of stuff on the magnet for the drain plug, but overall, the oil on this bike's always looked real clean coming out. If you haven't ridden a KTM 350, this is a super amazing engine, in my opinion. For a 4-stroke, it runs so smooth. It's very. I've always considered it very electric motor in its power delivery. Just super smooth, no spikes. Just keeps building, keep building. It'll rev. The stock tune is definitely corked up on an EXC-F. You'll notice that right off the bat, but it does get a little bit better as it breaks in. And truthfully, at least for my speed, for off-road racing, the stock tune was fine. It hooked up, it delivered power. Especially if you weren't winding it, it feels more choked up at high revs. So I can definitely see, like in the desert, I could really feel it choked up on dual sport rides where you're carrying a lot more speed coming out of corners on the gravel or on a fire road or something like that. You can really tell it's choked up. But in the woods, in the tight woods where you're doing more, 20 to 35 mile an hour or 15 to 35 mile an hour, I thought the motor was good. The biggest thing was that it runs hot. It's running lean, so the motor runs hot. The biggest reason I ended up doing something, and we'll get to that here in a second, but I was riding with 500s, 690s, 890s, and especially from a dual sport perspective on the gravel roads, it was hard to keep up. Especially if you're coming out of a 30, 40 mile an hour gravel or dirt corner and you're getting back on it, those bikes could leave me. So I wanted a little more power, especially for those situations. So at around 150 hours, I purchased a Get ECU from Takamoto, and you can see the map switch up there. Takamoto was wonderful to work with. I had sent them an email, listed out all my requirements, what I was looking for. I didn't want vibration to increase. I didn't want my fuel economy to really go through the floor. What I was looking for was a map one map that would run very similar to stock. So when I was racing, I didn't want to have a ton of hit or anything like that. But then I wanted a full power, let's get business done map for when I was dual sporting and wide open sections. So Takamoto really delivered. I can't say enough for how happy I am with the maps that they sent me. Low power, or the traction map, and it's not really even a low power. I think it delivers full power, but the way that traction map works is really amazing. To me, if you just take off and head down a paved road with that map on, it feels, I would say, fluffy is the term I would use. But you don't, in an off-road situation like a rocky uphill or a deep gravel route or something like that, where you're really trying to get the bike to hook up, it really hooks up. And again, it feels a little strange if you've got good traction. But if you don't have good traction, that traction map really hooks up. And I found myself using that traction map way more than I ever thought I would. So just again, really happy with the Get ECU that I got from Takamoto. At the same time, especially on this bike, it doesn't have an O2 sensor. So when I did the ECU, I did put on the Pro Moto Billet end cap, which is obviously faded over time, and with the ultra silent tip. It was a lot of work to put that on. Not a super easy install. Got it on there. My biggest thing there, it worked well. It works well with the ECU, at least from my perspective. It works well from the ECU. My biggest thing there is I loved how quiet the bike was. I'm getting old enough that I am over loud motorcycles. So I was super happy with how the bike ran before and how quiet it was. So even with the ultra silent tip, to me, it's a little on the loud side, and I would rather it to be quieter. But at the same time, I understand that we have to have a freer flowing muffler to make all the other mods work. So that is what it is. Again, for true single track, other than the motor running hot, the stock tune wasn't bad on the bike. I really did the change because I wanted the bike to have a little more power for dual sport. It definitely didn't make it some sort of outright. The ECU did not make the bike, rip your arms out powerful or anything like that, but it was a very significant, very noticeable difference. So if you're wanting more power out of your 350, then at least this generation, then you're looking at doing an ECU. And can't say enough about how well Takamoto was to work with to make sure that the maps that they sent with the ECU were what I wanted. Something else I did, I'm a fan of reckless clutches. That's some people are, some people aren't. I am. So this bike has the Radius X, which is one of their cheaper auto clutches. The thing works perfect. I love it. So the Radius clutch has been there. It's never, with 10,000 miles, it's never needed any plates replaced or anything. It comes with the adjustable master cylinder. Love it. I did put, you saw on this side, this bike did not come with a Kickstarter. This generation, you could still put the Kickstarter on, so I bought the kit. My worry was that I wouldn't be able to bump start the bike. After I got the Kickstarter and I put it on, I found out there is a way that using the adjustable slave, you can basically lock the clutch out and bump start it, even with a reckless clutch, but without a Kickstarter. I put it on there. I've used it maybe 4 or 5 times just to make sure it works, but it's a little bit of a security blanket just in case something would happen and the bike doesn't want to start. Without messing with the slave cylinder, you can't push start a bike with a reckless clutch. Again, love the reckless clutch, especially with this bike, and I talk about it a little bit more in my other video for switching over to dual sport, but when I'm running a little bit taller gearing for dual sporting to make sure I can have highway speed, it's nice. I'm running higher gearing, so the Recluse kind of smooths out some of those where you might be a little bit gear high or something like that. What else? So on the intake side, I'm not going to pull the cover, but I run a Pro Seal around the air filter so that the air filter seals well. I'm also a big fan of the funnel web filters. This is an Australian brand. I ran this on the NorCal BDR and super impressed compared to the other guys, and it was very dusty. Compared to the other guys' air filters, I was near the end of the ride before I even switched it out, and I probably didn't need it. I just had a clean one ready to put in. So super impressed with this filter. This is now my go-to, especially for dual sport riding where I'm going to be eating a lot of dust. It's going to be a lot of miles. It's going to be a long time on a filter. Racing, I'll run whatever I've got. I've got some different brands, Twin Air and others, but this funnel web, this is my go-to for dual sport now. Talked about the Pro Seal. I don't grease the rim on my filters with the Pro Seal on there. The reeds are in the bike still. They're super well glued in. They've not tried to fall out or anything, so I've never felt like I've needed to replace those. I think after I did one of my first mods, I replaced the coolant with engine ice. I've always been a fan of engine ice. When I first got the bike, I did have it boil over a couple times. For some reason, this bike was sent without a fan, and it was supposed to have one on it from the factory. So I worked with my dealer, and he got the fan kit for me, got it put on there. At the same time, I think I switched it to engine ice, and I've never had an issue with it overheating again. So each to their own, but I'm a fan of engine ice, and I've been running that in all my liquid cooled bikes. Sprockets and chain, I run. This bike would have come with 1452 from the dealer. I run 1352 for off-road and for racing. That's what an XC-W or an XC would have come on it. I've got a Super Sprox rear sprocket on here now. I was not a fan of the aluminum sprocket, so as soon as it started to show a little bit of wear, I put the Super Sprox on there. I'm not even sure what I'm running for a front. I do have the Dirt Tricks washer on here. I've replaced the counter shaft, seal, and O-rings and collar one time. And when I did that, I put the Dirt Tricks washer on there. That Dirt Tricks washer is a much bigger diameter than the stock one, and it has a little bit more of a dish. So it puts a little more pressure against those O-rings that are behind there to make sure that seals up better. After I've replaced the seal and I put that washer on there, I haven't had any more issues with that leaking. The last thing, kind of on the motor intake and exhaust, I do have a anti-gravity 801 battery in the bike. I think I put that in 1 to 2 years ago. There wasn't really anything wrong with the other one. It was still starting to fine, but it was getting a few years on it. So I upgraded to the anti-gravity 801 battery. And I have ran, this bike has a battery lead that runs from a ground that runs from the battery to the aluminum subframe. I left that on there, but I also ran another dedicated ground wire that goes from the battery, and then it runs up, and I have it attached to, I think it's to one of the coil bolts underneath the tank. All right, suspension. So overall, I wasn't super disappointed or unhappy with the stock suspension. The biggest thing was I'm 200 pounds, and I'm carrying luggage and things like that when I dual sport it. So the spring, especially the rear spring, was a little on the light side. So I worked with Javi at Trail Tricks out in Colorado, and I asked him to do his Magic Carpet Ride update for the suspension. So he converted the forks from open chamber to closed chamber. So when I bought the bike, it had the rebound adjuster on one leg and the compression on the other. Now the compression is at the bottom of both fork legs, and the adjusters on the top are both for rebound. Changed the shock from a piston to a bladder reservoir. You can find, I'll put a link to Trail Tricks website down in the description, but very happy with the suspension. It works great. It's plush when it needs to be plush. It holds up when it needs to hold up. I'm not a double A rider, so I probably don't punish suspension like some riders would. But overall, very happy with it. It's worked great for me. It was a good update. If I probably could have got away with just heavier springs on both ends, and stayed with the stock dampening and all the other parts. But overall, I'm happy with how the suspension working, and that's what I did on it. All right, controls. So I've got the stock bars, I've got the stock levers on the bike. They've worked fine for me. I have this, it's a BRP damped mount that also mounts my Scott's steering damper. I was really hoping that the BRP mount would reduce some vibrations. I really didn't feel like it was what solved any sort of vibration issues with the bike. The bike's fairly smooth. I did a lot of work on this bike to make it less vibey, and I have a separate video I'll link down in the description that goes through all those changes. But the BRP mount, I wouldn't say it really did much. What it did do, it obviously gave me a great place to mount my Scott's damper, and it raises the bars about an inch and a half, which is really kind of a sweet spot for what I needed. So overall, happy with it. But again, as far as a solution for vibration, I really didn't think it did much there. I have as well as this is the Clean Speed. You can see the name there. Clean Speed wire routing bracket. Super clean setup there. Almost a must-have if you're running a KTM with the Scott's dampener. I think they should just be selling them with them, but little part to go on there that makes that work a lot better. Then we've got ODI makes these Rogue grips. Huge fan of those, especially from a dual sport and a vibration control perspective. I think those make a big difference. So big fan of the ODI Rogue grips. We have Sick Ass made the switch cluster. I know you can get the same cluster from a lot of different places. The newer versions have a lot nicer looking LED bit up there on top, but and I don't think KTM's even fixed this on their newer bikes. The stock switch cluster over here is about 50% wider, and it will foul where this adjuster pushes in and out. It will foul on the switch gear. A lot of people then have to move their clutch way farther in than what it should be. The narrower switch gear is the way to go to address that problem. Then we've got another Sick-Ass switch over here, over under start switch, gets rid of the multiple switches that this bike anyway came with. And we've got, I do see I've got a horn switch here. I do not have a horn on the bike. That was something I took off and left off. Most of those horns are so wimpy that they're not going to do any good anyway, so I didn't want it hanging off the front of the bike in front of the radiators, which is where they put it. So took it off, threw it in a box, probably end up in the garbage someday. I put this Moto-minded dash on here, and really happy with that. Puts the key up here where you can see it. Puts the turn signal indicator up here where you can actually see it for dual sport riding. The dash comes with a USB port. I actually switched this port out, and it's you can see there, that is a powerlet or a BMW style port. The powerlet ports are just they are a more positive connection. So almost never use USB A, B, C or anything like that. I always use the powerlet. So that port's a little different than what it actually comes with, but real happy with the dash. And then you can kind of see this black bracket up here. That goes along with the windscreen that I put, the small windscreen, the Baja Works windscreen I put on for dual sport. I leave the bracket on there all the time. The one thing about that bracket, though, is that once that bracket is on there, it's very difficult then to pull the headlight shroud off. So one of the things I did, and it's got this, and then the Moto-minded dash has this little bracket here that pushes the shroud forward a little bit to clear the dash piece. So it made it very hard to pull this off. I've got a Chevy van. I couldn't put the bike in the van if I had the little windscreen on it. And I had to just unstrap it and just leave it hanging to the side if I did that. So Moto-minded also makes these cable guides. I've got 2 of them on there. So now my brake cable runs down through those brackets and behind the shroud, which overall is a much cleaner. It's not rubbing on the front of the shroud. It's not rubbing on the inside of the windshield. Overall, it's a much cleaner setup. Again, two moto-minded hose route clamps, I guess maybe you can call them. Then let's see what else. Sick-Ass Racing hand guards. I like the simpler, just straight style wraparounds. I know Cycra has the bend. I've always been more of a fan of this shape. G2 makes it something similar. I think in enduro engineering usually use this shape, or Moose does. Got the Sick-Ass Racing deflectors with the built-in turn signals. And then for my seat, this is the Seat Concepts Comfort XL seat. And I put it on here for dual sport riding. I really thought I'd be switching it out all the time. Actually, I don't. I run it all the time. I haven't found a reason for racing or for single track to take it off. It never feels like it's in the way. And in the standing position, especially when you're climbing hills and things like that, these flares actually give your legs something to lock into, almost like steg pegs do. So real happy with the seat. It's way more comfortable than stock, and I haven't had a reason to take it off for any reason. So that stays on there all the time. And I think the last thing I've got here from a control perspective are my foot pegs. The foot pegs are Flow Racing, and they're a dropped lower peg. I can't remember how much they drop. To me, it's not a huge drop, but it's definitely noticeable. I'm 6'2", and so the first thing I try to do when I'm setting up a bike is, I know a lot of people, they go tall seats, they go tall handlebars. The first thing I always do is see if there's a lower peg option. Yes, they can drag. There's some things there, but I would rather have my butt and my body closer to the ground and just move, give myself some more leg room, give myself some more height compared to the bars when I'm standing. So I always look for lowered pegs first. These have been great from as far as a lowering perspective, and they've held up well. I would say that I don't think, at least with this cleat design that they use, I don't think they're as grippy as my stock ones even were. So not super impressed by the grippiness of the pegs, but they've been fine for what I've done. And again, I really wanted that drop peg feeling. So those have worked out well. I wish they had just a little bit more boot traction. All right, wheels, tires, and brakes. So for single track and racing, I'm running the stock wheels that came with the bike. I've got a different set that I use for dual sport. I am, for off-road, I'm kind of hit or miss on whether I balance the front. Right now it's balanced. I've done a few enduros, and on some of the faster transfer gravel road sections, I can really feel the front end bounce up and down. I don't have it balanced. So I generally try to balance the front wheel. Again, kind of hit or miss on whether I balance the rear. Right now I'm running a Dunlop Geomax MX3S on the front. Really happy with the tire. It works great, pretty much in all conditions, dry, wet, everything else. It's been wearing really well. So right now, really happy with the MX3S front tire. Kind of a go-to do-it-all front off-road tire. Not DOT, so this is just an off-road tire. Stock front brake disc, stock front brake pads. Happy with the bite and the power from the OEM pads, so I've been sticking with those. I generally run either a Tusk or a Motion Pro lightweight rim lock on in the wheel, and I usually run Bridgestone ultra heavy tubes. I don't like them as much for dual sport, but for off-road where you're not going as fast, you're not getting as much gyroscopic effect off of the heavy tube. Love the ultra heavy tubes. I've never had a flat, knock on wood, during a race running those tubes, and they have they're so thick, they have a shape to them that they are very hard to pinch when you're putting them in the tire. So really happy with the Bridgestone tubes. They are expensive. They're about half the price of a tire, but they last forever. So ultra heavy tubes are my go-to. On the rear right now, again, stock rim. Right now, this one is not balanced. Ultralight rim clamp in there. And right now, what I've got on here is a Shinko 525 Cheater. I put this tire on a couple seasons ago, actually, to go ride some rocks down the Ozarks, and the thing worked really well down there. Obviously, it's gummy and it hooks up on the rocks. And then I just never took it off, and the thing just seems to work and grip and go everywhere. At least I've found it that way, and it wears, for being a soft tire, it's worn really well. If you can see on there, I have sharpened it at least once, and when I'm sharpening, I've got a knobby knife that I've had probably for, I don't know, 5 to 10 years now. If you don't have one of these, it's a great way to keep your tires good. A lot of my tires, the knobs are good, but the front edge and the back edge starts wearing off to where you can really feel the drop in traction. Sit down, behind the bike, have a beer, and put a new edge on them. So running the Shinko 525 for right now. This is a 120 on here, and I prefer actually a narrower tire in general. Other than dual sport, but for racing, I like a little narrower tire. I like the way the bike turns better. So if I was putting this tire on again, I would probably do the 110 and not the 120, because it feels like it's got a tall sidewall and a little broader profile than I like to have for off-road and single track. But again, I really felt like the tire would either fall apart or not have good traction in soft conditions and really hard conditions and some of those things, but the thing, it just seems to work everywhere. So haven't had a reason to take it off, and it's been on there at least for a couple of years and still got tons of life left. So real happy with that tire. For rear brake, I do the stock pads. Most people are familiar with this, but on a KTM, the stock rear pads are super grabby, and it's like a light switch. Either the brake is sliding or the tire is sliding, or you're not braking. So the EBC red pads are just kind of the go-to, at least around here, for the rear brake pads. So put those on a long time ago, and I've always been happy with those. For dual sport, actually a little more braking power would be good, but I haven't went that far as to switch the brake pads between single track and dual sport. So usually just run the red EBCs. And one last thing on wheels before we move on. I'm a fan of the Motion Pro rim armor tape that they sell. Look that up. I'll put a link in the description, but the rubber bands are junk that the wheels come with. I know a lot of people use duct tape or electrical tape, and I did that for years. But it's kind of almost a hard plastic tape that Motion Pro sells to set up your rim band. Really happy with it. Put it on there once. It lasts forever. So again, big fan of that, and I'll put a link in the description. All right, protection and plastic. So I bought the bike. I'm not a huge fan of all the orange on the KTMs, and I've always had a thing for white motorcycles and white cars and that sort of thing. So I switched out the plastic right after I bought it with Polysport 6 Days plastics at the time. Have all the originals still in a box, so someday when I sell it, I can put those back on. I have put on bike graphics. Did the number plate stickers for me a long time ago. They're obviously getting a little bit on the ratty side now. I use the stock gas tank for single track and racing type of situations. The bike still is on its OEM fuel pump. I bought a separate fuel pump for my larger dual sport tank. This has the original fuel pump in it, but I did replace the filter with a Wix filter, a Wix metal filter at around 200 hours. And so far, the pump's been working good. Another thing I did do is, and I can't even remember how the stock one was, but the fuel tank vent, you can see it just runs right over here to a little elbow that goes into the frame. That might be a little hard to see, but that's the way an XC or an XC-F would be. You can look up, for your year, you can look up an XC-F and buy that little elbow. It plugs right into a hole in the side of the frame. To me, that setup's a lot cleaner than what, I can't remember how it came with it. I think it ran it into a charcoal canister and all that, but I did that as part of taking all the emissions crap off. I did put these Cherubies frame guards on here. I really like to have a lot of traction or stiction between my boots and the frame. They really haven't, I wouldn't say they've really improved anything. They look all right, but as far as this rubber surface here providing more traction against the inside of your boots when you're gripping the bike, I really haven't noticed that as an improvement. The skid plate, this is the KTM hard parts skid plate. It hinges in the back, 2 bolts in the front, very simple, but it takes a beating. It's a lightweight part, easy on, easy off. So super happy with that. I do have some skid plate foam in there. I'm a big fan of using the skid plate foam if you're not using it. So it just comes in Tusk sells this. Just comes in a block. Cut that to the size that you want. Stick it in there. Really helps for keeping the mud from collecting in there. You can see it. It just comes up level with the top there. And it just keeps all that mud from packing in there and adding a bunch of weight to the bike. And it makes cleanup a lot easier at the end of the day. I also have the KTM hard parts shark fin. It went on there. Easy enough. Good part. It's taken some abuse and it's held up well. No complaints there. I put this Skull Racing head pipe protector on. This thing works great. It's actually kind of hard to find. It's my favorite design. My buddy has one just like it on his 501. Really like this protector. Again, it's a little hard to find sometimes and where it's available. I really wish, and if anybody has an idea or has found a part for this, but I wish there was a protector for this area because I burn boots and pants all the time on that, and obviously you can see the plastic's melted there. I've never found a protector for that area there, but really happy with the Scar head pipe guard. I did put, this is more of a recent update, is I put this Enduro Engineering wiring loom guard on there. It really felt like the wires that come out of the stator cover there are exposed, could be easily snagged by a stick or something like that. So put that little guard on there to keep that from happening. Obviously that would end your day. I have the Recluse slave cylinder guard and the chain guard that comes with that on here. If I had to do it all over again, I don't think it's critical. The reason I put this on here and replaced the more rubberized guard that comes on the bike, I was hoping I could get a 15-tooth sprocket to fit on here. I was playing with a lot of gearing, especially for dual sport, and I thought maybe that this guard and the way this is set up would give me a little more room for the 15-tooth. I just never could get a 15-tooth sprocket to fit on here and be comfortable with it. So that's why I bought the guard. It looks good, works. I'm sure it works fine. I haven't really tested it, I guess, so much, but I did it for the 15-tooth sprocket and it didn't work for me. So I don't know if I would consider that a must-do modification. The one from a protection perspective, the one thing I haven't done is I have not put any sort of radiator guard on the bike. These are the factory louvers are actually quite heavy duty compared to what you might see on like Japanese bikes and such, but they won't take a hit. This right hand side guard, it's got some tweak to it from actually a buddy laying it down, but I really haven't spent the time and done the research to find a set of guards that I want on here. These are a little bit stiffer, like I'm saying, a little bit stiffer than normal, but they do tend to collect a lot of crap in them. It seems like I'm always cleaning them out, but maybe someday. But it hasn't been a priority. From a lighting perspective on the bike, obviously not super important for off-road, but I basically stripped most of what the bike came with to make it lighter and more streamlined for single track. I have a Cyclops LED bulb in the stock shroud and headlight assembly. Really happy with that mod compared to some of the much more expensive options, and it really lights things up at night. I do a fair amount of night riding, and between that Cyclops bulb, it has a high setting, it has a low setting. I really appreciate that. And if I'm racing the woods at night, this headlight bulb in combination with some helmet lights, it works great. So I'm really happy with that. I'm running Sick Ass Racing deflectors with the integrated turn signals. I've abused the heck out of these hand guards, and the lights keep working. So very happy with that mod. And then my tail light, this was a tail light that I think I found on eBay back when I bought the bike. So 2019, 2020, and it's very similar to what Takamoto and Sick Ass and some of those sell now, but the integrated turn signals in the end of the taillight, all the one unit. Probably not the most visible taillight, but it works fine. I hope you enjoyed the video, and make sure and check out part 2 where I'll walk through the steps that I take and the parts that I use to get the bike ready for a long dual sport type ride. Like, comment, subscribe, share. You guys know the drill. And as always, we end our videos with a toast. Here's to proving you can have a midlife crisis your entire life. Cheers.